Hey guys, Attorney Walter Hnot. Now, one of the things I've been watching very carefully is the extent of food prices and food commodities as they go up, and when are they likely to go down? As I showed you about a week ago, I went to Walmart, bought my usual stuff that usually costs around $300. It cost $370 because there's a massive increase over just a 1 month period. And so, one of the big problems I want to go through is what can we expect from this whole changeover, this whole system that we have when it comes to food? Is it going to get cheaper? Is the food going to become more expensive? When can we expect this whole thing to change course so that we only have around 2% increase in food prices like we did during the prior administration, during the Trump administration and the Obama administration, things like that. So what we're going to do is go through an article specifically on what's happening with food going forward, and then we're basically going to go ahead and add some personal experience of what I'm seeing to kind of talk about it. So howdy, Rosa Soda. Howdy, howdy. So, real quick, guys, let me go to the article. This one's from the Epic Times. They tend to lean very right side or Republican side. So, just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this article. Looming price hikes on food set to hit Americans this fall. So, what they're saying is that we hit fall, the prices are going to be at the highest rate likely. Higher inflation could force Fed action, leading to a deeper recession. Now, as you know, everybody's reported that we're going into a recession. There's no way around it. It just is what it is. So here we go. In its effort to contain inflation, the Federal Reserve has launched what many expect to be an ongoing series of interest rate increases, which are already taking a toll on stock and housing markets, with job losses likely to follow. As wary as Americans have become from paying record high gas and grocery prices, however, another round of price hikes is making its way through the food supply chain and is expected to reach consumers this fall. Now, as you know, some people are reporting that Democrats should be celebrating right now because they're using consumer price index, a specific number, to show that we're kind of slowly getting out of the problem. And then the people who actually know how this works are reporting that those people are not turning their brain on because that particular metric doesn't actually include oil and food. So, politics. A quote: "People don't realize what's fixing to hit them," said Texas farmer Lynn Bugsy Allen. They think, you ever notice those farmers have like one cute thing in their name, like tallgrass or sawman or Bugsy Allen. They think it's tough right now, he said. You give it until October, food prices are going to double. Thank you, Shirley, for the donation. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. So, the 8.8% increase in food prices that Americans have already seen does not take into account the dramatic cost increases that farmers are now experiencing. This is because farmers pay their costs up front and only recoup them at the point of sale months later, or it could be years later, depends on what they're growing, could be animals. Usually, what we see on the farm, this is a quote, "the consumer doesn't see for another 18 months, said John Chester, a Tennessee farmer of corn, wheat, and soybeans. But with the severity of these cost increases, consumers could feel the effects much sooner, particularly if weather becomes a factor." Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are thinking right now that because it's going to be warmer this year, hence more hurricanes, yada, yada, that it's better for the growing of plants. But what people don't realize, because they didn't grow up on a farm, is that certain types of plants grow well in certain types of environments. That's why in Georgia you see one particular type of crop, peaches, versus Florida, where you would see a lot of oranges, although you could grow those in Georgia just as well. But the point is, you're going to be seeing certain things grown in certain areas. Some things you can grow anywhere, like hay. You can grow that anywhere. But the bottom line in this whole situation is that some crops grow well in particular climates. And when everything's hotter, they might not grow as well in that particular climate. So that's another thing that, just to throw in there from my background. Lorenda Overman, of a North Carolina farmer who raises hogs and grows corn, soybeans, and sweet potatoes, said the spike in fuel costs has put her farm into the red this year. Nothing that consumers are paying is going to bridge the gap for farmers right now, she said. The prices now have not hit the grocery stores yet, but she expects that they will start to by the end of summer. Faith Moore, thank you for the $1.99. I really, really appreciate it. Yeah, I see the little tired cup. I'm super tired. I'm super red. My whole body is filled with poison ivy. It's worse than usual. It's all over my hands. So it just, life is what it is. But here we go. Much of the cost of food hinges on the price of oil. This is highly accurate. And the thing that I don't appreciate from the current administration is their complete lack of respect for the reality of what diesel costs for what the farm equipment runs on. Most people think, for some reason, that if you don't like gas prices, you can just buy an electric car. There are no electric cars, even though that's moronic. There are no electric cars in the farm industry. Let me say it again. There are no electric cars or machinery, big stuff, in the farm industry. Okay. So when we're talking about mega machines, they run off diesel. And these mega machines that are, you guys are used to seeing like, a dump truck. These things, a lot of them are even bigger than a dump truck. So the point here is this, and you have to understand these machines are massive and they don't run on fairy dust, butterflies and blankets and that are embroidered with cutesy little like snuggle puffin designs. The point is we have to have diesel to create the food because it runs the mega machines that actually pull up the ground, plant the seeds, harvest the product, all of it. All right, so next argument. So we've talked about climate issues, we've talked about diesel issues, we've talked about food price increase issues, and now let's talk about fertilizer. Chester said that the fuel and fertilizer together make up 50% of his total costs, fuel and fertilizer. The price of diesel fuel has more than doubled from $2.50 per gallon at the end of 2020 to more than $5 per gallon today. Now, that's not a fair assessment. That's the Epic Times here went a little bit to the Republican side because we all know end of 2020, the prices were not particularly accurate. You should cite the end of 2019. Farmers say the cost of fertilizer, an oil derivative, has tripled and in some cases quadrupled. That's true. It's unfortunate. I'm on the farm right now, which is why I look sweaty and full of poison ivy as a result of working on it. We have horses here as part of the contract of people being able to utilize this farm in the future. We get the fertilizer. So the horse makes manure, we get to use it. Okay. Now, I'm going to give you another quote. All right. When you look at the machinery, this is a quote that uses diesel, it's farm equipment, it's railroads, and it's truckers. And Daniel Turner, executive director of Power the Future and Energy Advocacy Group, diesel moves all our goods. It grows our food from cargo ships arriving from overseas to trucks or trains getting these goods across the country. All those things have now have added costs that will get sent to the consumer. There's one thing missing from that quote that you need to know. Mega ships that run off of diesel, they don't actually run off of diesel that much. Like these giant cargo ships, they run off of what's called heavy fuel. And heavy fuel is a really dirty, disgusting fuel, and it puts a lot of crap into the atmosphere, but it's dirt cheap. So when they get into international waters, which doesn't take long, it's not that far off the coast for these ships, they're running on heavy fuel. But when they're coming into the international waters, they're required to use diesel. So for the majority of the time, these mega ships aren't actually using diesel, they're using heavy fuel. But diesel is what's required of them once they enter the dominion of those countries in the water that they claim. So just realize that. That surge in food and energy costs is very demand destructive for U.S. Also, heavy fuels obviously up as well. That surge in food and energy costs is very demand destructive for U.S. households, said Joseph Laverna, chief economist at Natixis, the European bank. If you have to pay a lot more money for your food, to heat or cool your home, or put gas in your vehicles to get to work, there's less money available elsewhere. Price hikes in gas and food will leave Americans with less money to spend on their other goods, which will reduce demand and have a knock-on effect on the wider economy. Everything we have, all these stuff we plug into the wall that takes electricity, for the most part, is fueled by either oil. This computer is being fueled by oil. You may not think that because I plugged it into the wall, but this computer is being fueled by oil. And the reason why it's being fueled by oil is because in this area, the thing that runs the power is oil. Other areas, it's coal. Oil and coal make up the significant part of the pie chart. So this is all the oil and coal. The other stuff that's very green takes up a very small amount. Okay. While it's possible that Americans' loss of spending power may help to reduce inflation, some economists fear a return to the 1970s era stagflation. Rising prices coupled with economic stagnation, increasing unemployment, that period of inflation was ultimately tamed by the Fed raising interest rate to nearly 20%, which means you can't buy anything. Nobody's buying anything. No new businesses are being started. Nobody's investing in anything. Done. 20% Interest rates, nobody's taking out money to buy a home. It's just going to F over all of the young professionals. All those like cute things that people put out there about like how, millennials aren't able to afford a home because their rent is more than the actual home would be if they were just to own it. But yeah, why can't they own a home? All those cute little tweets and things like that that they put out, that will be the nail in the coffin. And we're actually kind of rolling in that direction. In contrast to the Carter era energy crisis, because remember, the Carter era was really bad. Uh, there was Jimmy Carter. I mean, it was an epic fail. If you go research the time, it was like one of the worst ever. All right. So anyway, Carter era energy crisis, which was sparked by an embargo from foreign oil producers at a time of declining American oil output. Today's energy shortages are largely the result of domestic U.S. government policies. I'm going to read that again. This is important. Remember how under the Trump era, we had oil, we were building more pipelines. We didn't need the Middle East. We didn't need Russian oil. Let me read this real quick. In contrast to the Carter era energy crisis, which was sparked by an embargo from foreign oil producers at a time of declining American oil output, America wasn't back then making enough oil. The embargo on foreign oil really hurt us because we just couldn't get enough oil to power things. Here's the important sentence. Today's energy shortages, why we don't have power, why our food is so expensive, why things suck right now, are largely, that's a big B, are largely the result of domestic U.S. government policies as the Biden administration attempts to force Americans to switch from fossil fuels to wind, solar, and electric, even though electric mostly comes from fossil fuels. This effort has included shutting down pipelines, suspending oil and gas leases, and putting up regulatory roadblocks, all of which have reduced new investment in American oil and gas production. Last week, Biden stated that the spike in oil prices was an incredible transition that's taken place that, God willing, when it's over, will be stronger and the world will be stronger and less reliant on fossil fuels. Remember, fossil fuels tend to be heavy donations to the Republican side. So if they take out fossil fuels, oil, coal, they have more tech money being more important to power the left, Democrat-based political agenda. Even though Zuckerberg has come out and said, well, I'm not doing that anymore, who gave out, 400 million plus in the prior election. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said last week that rising oil prices were an exclamation point for the need to transition to wind and solar and build homegrown clean energy. Let me read it again because it's funny. It's actually hilarious. For the need to transition to wind and solar and build homegrown clean energy. Like what we had with the prior administration, where we had homegrown energy. It just wasn't clean. We were okay. We had cheap prices. It was okay. And the point I get pissed off is that the retired and the disabled, they're fixed income. This is a no-sum situation where they just fail. They end up in they can't get better. They can't get better. Boom, they fail. All right, let's keep reading through it. All right, so with natural gas prices now hitting a 14-year high, Biden's Department of Energy recently posted a few tips on how you can prepare your home and office to safely navigate a blackout. We're officially becoming California. Samantha Power, head of Biden's Agency for International Development, said the solution to rising fertilizer prices is natural solutions like manure and compost, and this may hasten transitions that would have been in the interest of farmers anyway. Never let a crisis go to waste. I mean, do they realize that farmers think they're idiots? They must realize that at some point they must realize that farmers know they're idiots and that maybe Americans don't know the difference, that don't know how much fertilizer is needed, how it has to be chemically treated to get the most potential product out of the ground. Maybe Americans don't know and farmers do. And maybe the White House knows, but they're just trying to manipulate things. It's what it appears to be right here. So here's a quote. That's not the real world. Overman said, we are in the highest density for hog production in the nation. There's not enough hog manure or turkey manure or chicken manure to fertilize our crops. We tried this this fall to lock in some chicken and turkey litter to spread on our crops, and there's none to be had. There's just not enough animals to produce the amount of fertilizer we need. Energy is very, and here's a quote, energy is very capital intensive business, and we're basically down to about half the level of CapEx without energy that we had a couple of years ago. Laverna said, a lot that has to do with the fact that oil companies are not tone deaf to what shareholders want, or more importantly, what the regulations and politicians want. Another quote, it's incredibly curious how all of Biden's rhetoric. I have yet to hear anything along the lines of, we will do everything to increase production in America, Turner said. They're comfortable with the current state because of their green philosophy, and we're just necessary casualties. That's probably the best quote from this. If you get rid of all the shenanigans, right? If you pull everything away and you ask yourself, who is paying the greatest price? Who is fragile right now and still paying the greatest price? Retired and disabled, fixed income individuals who are not able to work at the level that which would equate to a lot of money for them. They can't have a career. They can't. That's the bottom line. So who in America is the most harmed by the agenda of not making things cheap? Retired and disabled, simple. All right. And just that's the quote there, the necessary casualties. The disabled and retired are becoming necessary casualties because they're putting money into more expensive products as a result of poor White House policy. It's not because Trump did this. It's not because Obama did this. It's not because Bush did this. This is solely a Biden gig. That's it. There's only one guy at the top. Right now, his name is Biden. And he's not pushing the things. Remember how I made that video and I said it is certain now that we're going to be seeing, price increases and yada yada. And one person pointed out, they're like, well, it's the third quarter is going to define what the cost of living adjustment. If you don't, if you don't start opening leases for more oil in America, start promoting pipelines, start pushing truckers to do better, it's not going to improve, which means it is de facto certain. I don't care if we're going to make the decision officially in the fall. It is de facto certain that we can't fix it at this point. Why? Because it's May. It's May. June is around the corner. Then we're at July. We're over the hump at that point. All right. Next paragraph. Together with ruptures in global supply chains, oil and food prices are a key reason why many economists think the Fed will have a particularly hard time taming inflation. There's a real risk the price of gas could reach $6 a gallon by August. Natasha Kaneva, head of the global oil and commodities research at JP Morgan Chase, told the press U.S. retail price could surge another 37% by August. U.S. retail price could surge another 37% by August. My body would just threw up inside itself. It's just like, oh my, the higher prices climb. And I mean, look, I'm all for a fourth stimulus, but it's going to get to a point where we're not going to really call it a stimulus. We're just going to call it a keeping Americans from basically starving. We'll call it a starving helper. That's what it's coming down to. We think the risks are skewed towards a much more significant recession. Here's a quote. As inflation proves more persistent than is generally expected, the moves from the Fed currently envisioned by markets will be too slow to restrain inflation, stated economists from Deutsche Bank in a research report titled Why the Coming Recession Will Be Worse Than Expected. Another quote, a mild recession would be a relatively small increase in the unemployment rate. Laverna said, if, however, the Fed feels that it needs to compress demand further, then we are looking at a much deeper recession with the unemployment rate perhaps doubling, if not more. And that's the big thing here. Worse than the food, worse than basically the not having enough manure to go ahead and put on the crops, not having the basic chemical compounds we need to, get the soil to where it needs to be, is that when we go into this recession, which we are, everybody's certain of it, except the White House, which, come on. When we go into this recession, the problem is unemployment. Unemployment is what pays for all the benefits, including SSI, including SSDI, including retirement benefits. I am for social programs. As you guys know, some of my videos, somebody came out and they're like, man, you must be a very, very Republican, right-sided person. No, I am in support of social programs. When somebody's like, should we really have retirement? I sit back and go, absolutely, because Americans don't save their own money. in the way that they need to because they don't make any money anymore. There's no pensions, there's no 401ks unless you work for a tech company or you're older and you've been at the company forever. There's none of that crap anymore. We have to have social programs in the government because we don't make that much anymore. So the point here is this. What we're looking at is a scary thing. If we have unemployment at very high levels and we don't fix the economy, then we don't have enough money going to the trust funds and the general taxes. General taxes, SSI, trust funds, SSDI, retirement. That's scary. All right. Here's the next thing. One of the unique features of the current economic crisis is the extent to which it is driven by government actions. That's an interesting thought. It's the government controlling this whole thing, as opposed to the free market, people making products, making food, all that stuff, getting oil in, big ships, let's get it in, let's sell it, as opposed to a market failure. So what they're saying is it's a government-based situation. The failure has occurred as a result of government as opposed to market failure. This includes trillions of dollars in federal spending to prop up an economy reeling from draconian government lockdowns that now appear to have little success in containing the coronavirus. I mean, look, I don't care where you guys stand on the lockdowns, but that's not totally and completely why this is happening. You know, there's been a lot of bad policy choices post the COVID lockdowns. This spending was compounded by the Federal Reserve holding interest rates near zero while expanding its balance sheet to $9 trillion. By the way, guys, I'll just read the rest of the sentence. Flooding America with cash. Just so you know, we've reached over $30 trillion in debt to foreign nations and super wealthy families as America. If you think that you're not in debt, even though you have money, you're actually in debt because America took out debt on your behalf. They usually take out almost $3 trillion a year. They're trying to get it down to about $1 trillion, which is why the Democrats are saying that they've really done a good job. I have to go look at the numbers to actually verify those details when it comes to did they get it down to only $1 trillion in new debt that we're putting on the heads of the American public. These problems were then free, which is ironic too, because people run to this country to be part of it and get their citizenship. At what point is the tip going to happen and people are going to be going to Europe? People are going to be going to, obviously not Russia or China, but other places. All right. This spending was compounded by the Federal Reserve holding interest rates near zero while expanding its balance sheet to $9 trillion, flooding America with cash. These problems were then further exacerbated by the Biden administration's re-regulating of the economy and its and the issues he has with American fuel, with the American fuel industry, together with a Western boycott of Russian oil and fertilizer exports following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which they had to do. Biden had to do that. He had to go ahead and play tough with Russia. That's the bottom line. He had to cut it off. Inflation is a result of too many dollars chasing too few goods. And in this case, it has been a perfect storm on both sides of the equation. As the Fed works to cool demand by raising rates, some economists say the Biden administration must reverse the policies it's put in place that are undermining productivity and holding back supply. Now, just to simplify exactly what that paragraph is, they're saying that they want you to be able to buy less food with the money that you have so that the food will likely grow in the amount that is out there so that there will be too much supply and your demand for it will be less. How does that work with food? Well, the government actually subsidizes farmers. So it doesn't really work that well with food. And people need to eat. We're not talking about like iPhones and tractor. Well, you guys don't care about tractors, but like big screen TVs. Those are things we can probably live without. But food is tricky. We don't have vitamins that feed us yet. Given the federal government's reluctance thus far to take the necessary steps, some states have stepped up with their own solution, Williams said. Since March, 4 states, Iowa, Mississippi, Georgia, and Arizona, have gone through progressive income tax rates as high as 8% to flat tax rates in the range of 2 to 4%. So basically, states are saying, we can't tax our people this much. It's over the top. We're going to reduce specifically our taxes so that people can eat. That's 4 states, Iowa, Mississippi, Georgia, and Arizona. North Carolina eliminated business income tax, and 9 other states currently have no state income tax at all. That's how bad our federal government is at this point. The states are literally giving up income tax so that their populations can survive. That's how bad it is. That's how effed this is. Just to frame it for you guys, when a state gives up that, you know it's worse than you think. On May 17th, Senator John Barrazo, Wyoming Republican, and other GOP Republicans introduced the Onshore Act, which would give states the power to manage oil and gas production on federal lands within their borders. They simultaneously introduced the Lease Now Act, which would require the Department of Interior to resume the sale of oil and gas leases. We need that. We need it. We need diesel back. We need tractors running. Asked what Biden could do to help farmers, Allen said, lower the fuel prices. It will save the middle class people. It will help them when it comes to buying food. Biden has so far responded over the last couple of years with, we're going to magically save America with windmills, solar farms, and butterflies. And as somebody who drives a Prius, I'm very pleased I have one right now. I have not been using my diesel truck at all for the most part because it's just too expensive. I really worry what's going to happen because our standard of living is just diving, right? People that were like, hey, I have a house. Now they have not a house. People are like, hey, I have a car. Now they have not a car. People are like, hey, I have HBO Max. Now they're like, I have Disney Plus. I'm just kidding. Everybody loves Disney Plus. I haven't seen Kenobi yet. Don't tell me what happens in it. The point is, we're doing this. We're in a honey boo boo government state right now. The economy is honey boo booing all the way down. And I hate to put it that way because there was a lot of hope in this administration doing a lot for the retired and the disabled. Now, there are Democrats in the Senate and the House that are putting up amazing bills, incredible bills. Vermont has some of those, individuals that are just amazing. Ohio area specifically. Look, the point is this. Don't look to the head of what's going on right now for what other people are doing. The fix to this whole thing is not going to come from the White House. It's going to have to come from the senators. It's going to have to come from the House reps and angry Americans. That's the reality. Anyways, guys, I will catch you a little bit later. I might do one more video, but as you can see, I'm sweating from all the poison ivy all over, and it's miserable. I will catch you a little bit later, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And remember, stay positive because just, stay positive, but be prepared. This is all a heads up to be prepared about being able to get food, being able to transport food, all those things. All right. I'll catch you a little bit later. Have an absolutely wonderful day. And I really, really hope you guys are doing as well as you can be. If you have any questions or want to, ask me things, every Thursday night, 8 to 10 p.m., I go live and basically answer any questions you guys have about disability law, anything related to SSI, SSDI, things like that. All right. Have an absolutely wonderful day. I'll catch you later. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.